Buying or selling something always carries risk, especially if you are not familiar with the organization you are dealing with, and even when you have trusted business partners. Unforeseen circumstances can cause disruptions with real financial consequences. Fortunately, there are ways to manage your risk. A letter of credit is a payment method that smooths the way for international trade and a variety of other transactions. A bank or a financial institution acts as a third party between the buyer and the seller and assures the payment of funds on the completion of certain obligations. Often in international trade, a letter of credit is used to signify that a payment will be made to the seller on time and in full, as guaranteed by a bank or financial institution. Banks also collect a fee for service, typically a percentage of the size of the letter of credit, in addition to requiring collateral from the buyer. Thus, different from remittance and collection, letter of credit is a kind of bank credit and is known to be one of the safest payment options for importers in international trade transactions. Main parties of a typical letter of credit transaction are applicant, beneficiary, issuing bank, and advising bank. Applicant is the party who requests his bank to issue a letter of credit. Usually, it is the buyer or importer. Beneficiary is basically the seller who receives his payment under the process. Issuing bank, also called opening bank, is responsible for issuing the letter of credit at the request of the buyer. It is generally located in the country of the importer. Advising bank, also called notifying bank, is responsible to communicate the LC to the beneficiary after checking the authenticity of the credit. The advising bank acts only as an agent of the issuing bank, having no engagement on their part. It is generally based in the exporter's country and may even be the exporter's bank. There are also some other parties involved in an LC arrangement, such as paying bank, also known as reimbursing bank, is the bank nominated in the credit by the issuing bank to make payment against stipulated documents, complying with the credit terms. Normally, issuing bank maintains an account with the reimbursing bank. Negotiating bank negotiates the documents related to the LC submitted by the exporter. It makes payments to the exporter subject to the completeness of the documents and claims reimbursement under the credit. Negotiating bank can either be the separate bank or an advising bank. Confirming bank is the bank that adds its confirmation to a credit upon the issuing bank's authorization or request. As per the letter of credit rules, the confirming bank has clear payment obligations. It is the primary party to the credit and it undertakes all the obligations of the issuing bank. Even if the issuing bank fails, the confirming bank is bound to honor its commitments. It comes into the picture when the exporter is not satisfied with the assurance of the issuing bank. The confirming bank will be situated in the exporter's country. The advising bank may also assume the role of confirming bank. Thanks to the International Chamber of Commerce, ICC, with its Uniform Customs and Practice for Documentary Credits, UCP, publications, we can understand wholly what a letter of credit process would look like. The entire process on the LC consists of 4 primary steps. Step 1. Issuance of LC. After the parties to the trade agreed on the contract and the use of LC, the importer applies to the issuing bank to issue an LC in favor of the exporter. The LC is sent by the issuing bank to the advising bank. Once the advising bank receives the operational instruction from the issuing bank via SWIFT message, the letter of credit is in effect. The advising bank or confirming bank verifies the authenticity of the LC and forwards it to the exporter. Step 2. Shipping of goods. After receipt of the LC, the exporter is expected to verify the same to their satisfaction and initiate the goods shipping process. Step 3. Providing documents to the confirming bank. After the goods are shipped, the exporter, either on their own or through the freight forwarder, presents the documents to the advising or confirming bank. Step 4. Settlement of payment from importer and possession of goods. The bank, in turn, sends them to the issuing bank, and the amount is paid, accepted, or negotiated, as the case may be. The issuing bank verifies the documents and obtains payment from the importer. It sends the documents to the importer, who uses them to get possession of the shipped goods. To understand the process clearly, refer to this image. Suppose Mr. A, a Chinese exporter, has a contract with Mr. B, an importer abroad, for sending a shipment of goods. Both parties, being unknown to each other, decided to go for an LC arrangement. The letter of credit assures Mr. A that he will receive the payment from the buyer, and Mr. B that he will have a systematic and documented process along with the evidence of goods having been shipped. From this point on, this is how a letter of credit transaction would unveil between Mr. A and Mr. B. Mr. B goes to his bank, that is the issuing bank, and issues a letter of credit. The issuing bank further processes the LC to the advising bank, Mr. A's bank. The advising bank checks the authenticity of the LC and sends it to Mr. A. Now that Mr. A has received the confirmation, he will ship the goods, and while doing so, he will receive a bill of lading along with other necessary documents. Further, he will send these documents to the negotiating bank. The negotiating bank will make sure that all necessary requirements are fulfilled and accordingly make the payment to Mr. A. Additionally, the negotiating bank will send all the necessary documents to the issuing bank, which again, the issuing bank will send to Mr. B to confirm the authenticity. Once Mr. B has confirmed, he will make the payment to the issuing bank, and the issuing bank will pass on the funds to the negotiating bank. As we can see, the banks play a vital role in business agreements from beginning to end. Letter of credit protects the interest of both buyer and seller. On one hand, it can offer a guarantee to the seller that they will be paid. On the other hand, the buyer can be sure that no payment will be made until they receive the goods. But as with any financial instrument, even letter of credit has disadvantages. For instance, it is complicated and it's easy to make an expensive mistake when using one. In the next lecture, we will take a look at its complexity from the perspective of its classifications. See you next time.